Hey, folks. Hope you're doing well in your respective corners of the world. Um, I am here without any children today, so I'm doing really great. I might actually get something done. I'll try to keep this reasonably brief. Hopefully, you saw a couple of emails that I've sent recently just pertaining to some specific questions relating to the articles and that sort of thing. I can kind of recap that a little bit here, but I'll try to keep some of the more logistical stuff, hopefully within Canvas or as I was getting feedback from a number of you, most people were good with like this video format, that sort of thing. But also, and it makes an extraordinary amount of sense, it can be helpful to have a thing that's actually written out that you can make reference back to. And so when it comes to some of the more logistical stuff, I'll try to kind of have at least emails where you can go back, make reference, and have that stuff more accessible. So as we shift through this, I'll touch on those quick, and then I'll spend more time trying to speak to the less logistical, more kind of big picture sort of stuff, because it's probably not lost on anyone that there's a term in the business for it. It's all right. Shit's getting real. Shit's getting real. Hard to believe we're actually shifting into the fifth week already, starting with our drafts for the literature review. So that's what I'll try to speak to more here. So just really quick, again, my emails, I hope that they made sense in answering the questions. There was confusion, because of course there was, surrounding, initially it had said that the articles, both the responses and the discussions for 4, 5, and 6 were going to be due this week. That was just an error within Canvas, and I went through, found a bunch of places where dates were still not correct. I think I have them right now. I'm still going through trying to double check myself. But if you come across anything, feel free to holler. I appreciate it when you call my attention to things like that. So just on numbers 4 and 5 for this week, and it seems that as I'm looking at things, the presentations, you guys are doing excellent on the presentations. In addition to that, going through the discussion threads, looking at the conversations that you guys are having relating to those are fantastic. I mean, your questions, your insights, your the points that you're hitting on, I'm very pleased with how all that's going. So nice work with all of that. I think I had mentioned in one of the messages, there's still a little bit of flux, just in terms of the assignment of the papers and people here, there, scheduling. So I'm still trying to accommodate for that, but that's my problem, not yours. I'll try to make sure it doesn't have an impact on the stuff that you guys are doing. One of the other questions relating to that being that there was the whole series of links to the articles in that initial first module that was the bookmark here page that contained all the readings to select from, and then once you had sort of been assigned to the topic and the scheduled time and that sort of thing, and each of you then selected a single article, only the articles that were assigned or otherwise selected should be the ones that are showing up within those modules, and the ones showing up in the modules then are the ones that you would read and write to and speak to in the discussions and that sort of thing. So I'm sorry for the confusion on that. I need to get in, and once I make sure absolutely everybody knows exactly what they are supposed to be working on and which ones are what, I'm going to try to go through and score those out, put a line through them or whatever else, just to indicate you don't have to work on that particular one. If this is confusing, just holler at me, because I read my emails half the time. I'm like, what is he talking about? Okay. Having said that, the feedback as you're getting it, I hope you're seeing the feedback. I recognize that again, with there being so many moving parts in a course like this, you've got your workbook, there's the Google Docs, there's the within Canvas assignments, there's the discussion boards. You're kind of spread out all over the place, and that goes for me as well. Not to mention I have those with my other classes too, and all of it starts to blend together, as I'm sure you know. So I hope that you're seeing the feedback, and I hope that it's helpful and useful on the stuff that you're doing. Sometimes I'm plugging it right into the workbook document or the Google Doc as sort of track changes or those sorts of things. Other times I'm putting it into the Canvas within the assignment itself. I know a lot of you are seeing it because you're getting back to me and things like that. But just to mention it, that I hope you're seeing those things as they're coming in on your end. Okay, so I think that's all I really wanted to say, at least in terms of the nuts and bolts of this week. Um, so let's move to talking about the literature review piece of this, because it is getting real. We are diving into the actual document itself. The thing I want to emphasize more than anything right now, I'll say it right here at the beginning, I'll try to throw it in the middle, and I'll say it again before we wrap it up. It's just a draft. It's just a draft. Creating any kind of a document, whether it's a full research paper or a literature review, whatever it is, it's ugly. It's quite frankly just a very ugly process. And there's a lot of pressure. The absolute hardest thing about, I think, any form of writing is just that initial piece, just getting to that blank page and starting to get it filled. And I'm hopeful that some of these exercises, outlining exercises and going through review papers and getting a feel for how they're written, how they flow, these sorts of things, at least give you a little bit stronger footing, a better springboard to kind of jump into it. But I know it's never easy, and there's not a right answer in the way to go about it. So I emphasize, keep in mind this is just a draft. It is, it's on the front end. They're all going to be ugly. They always are. But that's why we're starting this now. That's why there's going to be a process. We're going to have peer feedback, my feedback. We're going to work on this stuff. And then over the weeks, of course, like what we're working towards is a nice polished product at the end where we can tie a little bow on it and slap it on the refrigerator with a magnet and all that good stuff. So don't overstress, don't overthink, says the guy who overstresses and overthinks about everything. Okay. Little bits of advice, some that are probably beyond obvious. There are some examples, the links within the assignment itself that take you to web pages that give explanation, those kinds of things. Obviously, please use those. They're very informative. They're hopefully going to be very helpful in putting your stuff together. I was going to make mention, I know that hopefully in reading examples, those outlining things, you kind of have a feel for how you would lay out information in something like a literature review. Depending on your comfort level or your familiarity, one of the things to sort of emphasize up front is, they're not like the article reviews. So these are to be written in that more APA, detached third person assessment of the papers. You're not really going to bring subjectivity to it. You're not going to spend time talking about how I interpreted it as this, or I found this confusing, or this was really neat. You're really trying to do that. I'm a scientist. Detach yourself from your person and just sort of objectively give us an overview of what that body of literature looks like. And also, sort of unlike the article reviews as you have been writing them, this isn't really going to be like a collection of article reviews, in the sense that, I don't want you to take, this paper that was initially done, give me a nice sort of review of that paper, and now let's go to the second paper and sort of give me a review of that paper, and have them separated out in that way. This really is supposed to be sort of integrative. You're taking the body of the literature and you're creating a singular narrative that's summative, that takes it and tries to sort of look for the pattern, the overall picture that's emerging from the literature. I hope that you're having good fortune. I haven't had too many people reaching out about doing the actual database searches and finding the right keywords and authors and ways to access the different papers. I largely, you're all very advanced students, so you have a really good feel for this, which does a lot of good for my mental well-being. But you start to begin to have a sense when you take that initial paper that you're working from, you're kind of taking it in the direction that you're interested in. And hopefully what is happening for you, and if it's not, let me know. I can give you some pointers on this. But hopefully what's happening for you is that you're finding papers that are relevant, that are related, that as you're starting to go through the papers, what you're seeing is, oh yeah, this paper that I found actually makes reference to this paper that I read, and both of those papers and these other papers I'm finding all seem to be, they all make sure to reference this particular paper, which is always a good indication that if you're seeing citations recurrent through the readings that you're doing, that's probably a pretty canonical source. It's probably going to be an important foundational piece of the research. And the more time you spend sort of digging around the literature, finding those different papers, how they interconnect to one another, how they reference one another, how they take what this person did and add to it, change it, that sort of thing. I mean, what you start to find is you're feeling out the body of the literature here. You start to actually find a sort of closed system of the work being done in that area. And it's not easy to integrate that, and that's where I really want you to know that you're not doing a meta-analysis of an entire field of work that's been done. I'm hoping that you've found a particular area, and it seems most of you have, related to that subject that is of interest to you, and you can guide where that goes, what that looks like, and how that works. In terms of how to then integrate it, if you're not separating these things out, paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, that means you're hopefully doing it conceptually, which is a more abstract way of thinking about it, just because it's the most easily brought to mind for me. An example would be like one of the more recent things that I was writing. So it was an introduction. It wasn't a literature review, but it was a very long introduction where I was trying to integrate the literature on risk choice behavior, sort of risky choice, risk assessment, these kinds of things. And my goal was to actually marry the literature from largely human studies that emphasized affect, cognition, very human sorts of qualities, and work being done more in my world, which is the comparative animal literature, which is more behavioral and biological. And so the way I had to try to integrate this was to start into a very broad overall picture. This is what risk is, or how it's operationally sort of defined, or the different ways in which it can be defined that way. And here's how work has, played itself out with human subjects. They use gambling paradigms where we're looking at basically betting and risk in the way of gambling. And I pull in a whole series of papers, right, that use that particular approach and kind of what they've found and what their theoretical explanations look like. And then I shift into, but there's also human literature that uses hypotheticals. So instead of sitting down and dealing things out and making bets, that sort of thing, I'm giving you scenarios, right? You're running late for work and you gotta get there, you're gonna be in trouble, and you find this parking spot that's like super close, but you might get a ticket, or you park further away, but it's gonna take you longer to get there, stupid, whatever. But trying to assess risk in that way. And so I go through and then I pull all these papers in, talk about what they did, what they found, what their theories sort of look like, and then kind of shift into how they've employed affect and mood and using different techniques to try and instill mood states by watching vignettes or writing out personal stories, this sort of thing, and trying to transition all that down to say, but this is, what their behavior has tended to look like, and behaviorally, this is the animal literature, and then shift into talking about work being done with animals, how optimal foraging theory fed into animal choices and morphed into risk-sensitive foraging theory, and just trying to sort of tie it all together, which if you're still awake, congratulations. But the idea being it's conceptually driven. It's not driven by the papers themselves or the authors. It's the big ideas, and then I pull the literature that's relevant into the conversation that I'm trying to create. And in the case that I'm describing to you, like I say, it was a literature review in the sense of being an introduction, because what I was leading to is by the end of all this explanation, I should have given you all the background, enough of the rationale, that now when I propose my study and I say, these are my hypotheses and this is what I'm going to do and why I'm going to do it and with whom, and that all makes sense. For you, you're just trying to get down to the end of a sort of conclusion to say, given the body of literature, this is in essence the state of the art. This is what I've found. Hopefully there's a breadth when it comes to like publication date. So like I say, going back to a canonical source, I'm citing papers from 1963 and 1974. But that being said, I'm also then relating those up and saying, yeah, 2019, 2018, this is more contemporary, but still making reference back. So you want to have a hodgepodge, or sort of enough variety where your reader is getting a nice overall picture. This sounds great, and I think we all have a sort of intuition as to like what it is. Pain is the process of making that happen, and finding the right tools, the right flow, and these are not easily attained, and that's, again, so here's my plug again. It's only a draft, and it's riding a bike. It's learning how to do the thing. I mean, think about the first research paper that you ever wrote in college and what that looked like relative to what you're capable of now. And that's what we're trying to do basically in this number of weeks, is to take where you're at now with that kind of scientific writing and integrative thinking and that sort of thing, and now we're going to keep building on it, and we're going to help each other. We're going to give each other feedback and buttress each other up and give each other support. I'm going to be in there doing the same kind of thing, and that's what it's all about. Don't be hesitant because you don't feel like, I don't want my peers to see this. This is terrible, whatever. They're all terrible. I mean, if I'm writing out an initial literature review right now, it's going to be pretty terrible. It's going to be multiple drafts before it actually becomes the thing I want it to be. So take that for what it's worth. I know that, a lot of what I'm saying right now, I hope it's helpful, but I know it's also very abstracted. It's not concrete examples of, you write this, and then you do this, and you stick this here. It's less linear in that way. There's no one way to go about it. Each of you is going to do it in your own way. I hope that the instructions that are on there are reasonably clear as to creating the Google document, sharing it in a way that everyone at OSU can access this, give feedback, that sort of thing. There is another link that you should see down below that says, once you've read this person's stuff, like fill out this particular sheet, and it's just a quick give a quick assessment score of how the strength or the weakness relating to this particular section of the paper, relating to this particular component of the paper. And these are anonymous, and then I take those, I compile them, and then I give you, hey, overall, this was the mean score that you got for, clarity. This is the mean score that you got for, these different aspects that relate to your paper. And then also written out feedback that says, hey, I thought this was really, really great, but, this was maybe lacking. I'd like to see more of the blah, blah. And then we're going to take all that feedback from each other and across the board, and hopefully it's going to be helpful. So without getting into the logistics of that, I'm just going to kind of leave it. I hope that the page is pretty clear with that stuff, but the drill, right? If it's not, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. I've been trying to make sure that I'm on top of the questions being asked in the discussion forum area. Like yesterday, I think I brought some of those out to email because I'm not certain if everybody is seeing the discussions taking place in the Q&A area, so I hoped that sending it in email is maybe more helpful. But now I'm just blah blah blahing, so seems like a good point to stop. So best of luck, be in touch, let me know what I can do that is helpful or useful or whatever, and may the force be with you.